It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by Agile Dad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. Hello, everyone. I got asked a pretty magical question this past week, so I thought I'd pass it along to you and give you some feedback. I was teaching an advanced certified Scrum Master course, and someone asked me, they said, does Scrum have an Achilles heel? And I found that very interesting because my answer kind of shocked everyone. I emphatically said, yes, in fact, any agile project management technique, any kind of, I don't care if you call it a technique, a symposium, a process, a framework, I don't care what you call it. If one little tiny word is missing, then everything goes to pot. Are you ready? Drum roll. The answer is trust. The second you eliminate trust from the picture, everything else goes away. I know it sounds crazy, but one of the guides, one of the guiding principles in the Scrum Guide, in the 2020 Scrum Guide, it says, when these values are embodied by the Scrum team, talking about Scrum core values, and the people they work with, the empirical Scrum pillars of transparency, inspection, and adaptation come to life, building trust. It's one of those things that are easily overlooked. But the second you take trust out of the picture, the second leadership doesn't trust the team and their ability to get work done, the second people start micromanaging or helicopter managing, the second you see trust where team members don't trust each other, the moment you see trust erode, that is when things start going south. So if you remember the force, the five values, you have focus, openness, respect, commitment, and extreme courage. Those are the five values. And those five values and following those five values and the accompanying principles lead to the empirical process, which is transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Those empirical pillars are literally what brings Scrum to life. And that's where trust is built. I think that too often we don't, I'm just going to come out and say it. Most of the environments that I go into, I see where people say, oh, well, the team hasn't earned my trust. Scrap that. If that's the way you really feel, then you're approaching this wrong. No one should have to earn your trust. You should give your trust, and it should be theirs to lose. And what I found is if you give people your trust, if you give teams your trust, you're going to find that you're in a much better place. I think that too many organizations fail at the trust game. And there's so many things out there. I'm trying to remember where I read this, but I read something called the levels of trust. Now, I don't remember the author. I apologize. But I do remember sort of what these six principles were. So I'm going to share these six principles with you. And if we can find, if someone wants to leave it in the comments, that would be great. I'll make sure I give attribution. One was that you have to trust in yourself and the value of your contribution. You need to make sure that you trust that you're doing the right thing, that you're doing your best, that you're helping other peers, but that you're doing everything that you can do to add value. One of the questions that I often ask teams is, how many of you feel like you come to work every day and work with the utmost integrity and do your absolute best job? And then I ask a follow-up, how many of you feel like everybody that you work with comes to work every day and works with the utmost integrity and does a stand-up job? And it's amazing to see how that number drops from 90% of the people having their hand up, or 90+%, to almost none. It's amazing to watch how fast the trust erodes. Which leads me to the second principle. The second principle is trust between members of the team, or trust between members of your family. And this is where you need to trust each other in order to do what's in the best interest of the team or the best interest of the organization. Just makes sense. The third one was trust your leader. And that's interesting. So when it says trust your leader, I'm going to apply this to Scrum and say trust in your team lead if you have one, or in your architect, or in your whoever is leading the charge for that particular product or project that you're working on. You need to make sure that you have that trust and do your best to support that individual, because that individual in return will support you. Trust that what you're being asked to do is important. I remember this one, right? It's just one of those things where, you shouldn't be asked to do something unless it's important. And not everything has a compelling reason to do it. So I think it's just a matter of trusting that you're being guided to do the right work, and trusting that you're not going to get interrupted and you're going to be allowed to finish the work that you've committed to. All right. If you flip the scales, leadership, of course, needs to trust their people. We were just talking about that. When leaders trust team members, they need to do what's in the best interest of the team. So that makes sense, right? You need to make sure that you have that trust built. And I think the last one is trust that the whole is greater than the one, meaning that the collective genius of the team, the collective genius of the people that you work with, is going to be smarter than you trying to do everything on your own. So don't think of you first, think of team first. And I think that those elements are really what drives organizations to have successful agile implementations. Now, in addition, sometimes we talk about people who who have to trust that the work that's coming to them is the right work. And I know I sort of touched on that, but it goes higher than just product ownership. Sometimes we have to trust in stakeholders, executive leaders, and other people that they're giving us the right direction, that we're being driven in the right direction. Other times, we have to flip that around and make sure the stakeholders trust the team to do well, that they're not going to try to spoon feed the team the information. And those two aren't necessarily part of that other document, but I just remembered that those two elements are also incredibly important. Now, with the Scrum values, they hit on every single one of them hit on trust in some fashion. Whether you're talking about courage and openness, you have to have trust to be open and have courage and to be able to speak your mind and to have radical candor and to create an environment where psychological safety reigns. With regard to respect, trust and respect go hand in hand, right? Trust and commitment. I have to trust that when a team commits to do something, they're going to do it, and the team has to trust that I'm not going to overload them with work. And then, of course, focus requires trust as well. The truth is, everything starts and ends with trust. I'm going to go back to a Scrum guide for a minute. There's another quote. It says, in complex environments, what will happen is unknown. Only what has already happened may be used for forward looking decision making. And that means that everything starts and ends with trust. And if you just put trust first, that's where you're going to have the greatest environments. That's where you're going to have teams that really work together and reach high performing. It's where you have leadership that understands how agile should be implemented. And most importantly, it's going to get rid of that Achilles heel and stop people from, tripping up, because you can be doing everything else in your agile implementation correctly. If you omit trust, you're done. So speaking of done, that's going to do it for today. If you have a topic you want us to cover, feel free to reach out to us at learnmore@agiledad.com. And as always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends.